Hello crafty friends, Shana from ShanoukiArt. Welcome to episode 9 of Art Journal August. I'm putting a disclaimer at the beginning of this one. This page is a little crazy and will definitely pull you out of your comfort zone. We're going to be using some of the leftover masterboard that we created in episode 1, and then any kind of scraps that you have, preferably if you have any black and white for contrast, otherwise really anything you have in your stash. And then a bright colored embroidery thread, and then if you have a matching acrylic paint, the same color as your thread would be great. If not, just need a bright colored thread and a bright colored acrylic paint. I've just quickly placed some papers underneath my pages to protect the pages below. My foundation pages there's one white one and one black with a little bit of white. If you have this in your journal or in the paper that you're working on, that's great. If not, try and create a black and white contrast like this, whether you have to add a white paper or maybe something darker on the other side. Totally okay though if you can't get two different pages. The acrylic color that I'm using is called Hot Pink. I've added some to my palette and then I'm adding some water to water it down. Using my paintbrush, I'm going to mix that really well. I'm going to use this for splatter, so I'm going to first test it on a scrap piece of paper to make sure that the droplet consistency is correct. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to splatter it all over my double page. How beautiful does it bright pink look on the white background and the black background? I'm then going to dry all my splatter really well. I'm now going to take my masterboard, created in episode 1, and I'm going to tear it into strips. My strips are roughly about 1 centimeter wide. They can be as thick or as thin as you want. If you didn't create a masterboard along with me from episode 1, that's totally okay too. You can create strips from scraps of paper, pieces of magazine pages, or maybe any other artwork you've created that you're happy to tear up. I'm just showing you multiple ways to use the masterboard we created. We created one of the covers, we've made a tag, and now we're using it in the actual spread. I'm now also tearing my black and white bits into strips. Working in my journal now, I'm going to add my strips across from left to right. I'm going to have them each at different lengths and at different levels as I place them across. You can either just glue as you go, or you can first place them down to get a kind of placement before you commit to glue. Do whichever you're more comfortable with. I tend to sort of first see where I want to place everything, just roughly, and then I apply the glue. What I'm also doing when I'm overlapping them, I'm having the left side of the strip underneath the strip before it, and then the right hand side over. So the left one is always tucked in the piece before. My little strips weren't really staying in place as I was trying to place them, so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to glue and go. I'm using Mod Podge to stick mine down. It doesn't dry immediately, so it does give me some time to move the bits around if I change my mind. I've used this technique before in some other art journal pages over the years, and I love that you can use up scrap bits of any kind of paper that you have. Those little bits that you might have just thrown into the bin is a great way to make use of them, and I think it creates a really cool background. So I'm just going to continue with my placement of all my little strips, generally alternating between the color and the black and white. I just wanted to note something about the colors I used. The acrylic paint, or the hot pink that I used for my splatter, as you can see, doesn't feature at all in any of my strips. I did this on purpose to create contrast. So what you can do is, when you have decided what papers you're going to use for your strips, you can find a nice contrasting bright color. You could use a color that features in the strips, that's also fine. But to create a bold contrast, pick a bright color that doesn't actually feature in any of your strips. Once all the strips are stuck down and everything is nice and dry, we're going to do something crazy. We're going to measure the middle section of the page on the right, and then we're going to tear that in half. Glue down any bits that may have come undone. This one just unstuck a little bit, and then we're going to tear this torn piece in half again. Are you out of your comfort zone yet? We're then going to reattach the pieces we've torn off, but we're not going to put them in order. They're going to be either sideways or upside down. They're going to create a totally different pattern. The way we're going to attach these to the remaining half page in our journal is by sewing them. To make things easier for me, I'm going to pierce some holes with my awl. This is where my needle will go through. And I'm not really aligning anything up, I'm just piercing holes. I want it quite rough and uneven. For this part, I would suggest using an embroidery thread, which is slightly thicker. Using a normal sewing thread will be too thin, unless you put it maybe 4-ply, like use 4 pieces of thread. You want it to show and you want it quite bold. After trying to stitch this together, I realized I needed to hold these pieces together a little better to help with the stitching. So I added a piece of masking tape at the back, just on the joining, so that it is aligned and easier to sew. You could also stick a strip of paper. I'm now going to sew my embroidery thread. I'm not really doing any kind of pattern. I really am just going in and out of the little holes that I've pierced. And then I'm going to leave the knot that I've created at the end of my thread on the top part, so it is showing. So I'm going to go in down through the stitching first, so my knot is on the outside. This just adds texture and additional interest. You could create a zigzag or a cross stitch. You could use actually multiple colors of thread for this. Just let your imagination take you wherever you want it to go. Mine is pretty rough and ready, what I like to call sort of a Frankenstein type of stitching. I will never be obviously a surgeon with this kind of stitching, but that's also okay. And for the end, I'm going to pass it through twice and then just sort of create a loop at the back to hold the thread in place. More like a loop knot, if that makes sense. And then we're going to stitch this piece we've just stitched together to the main page. Again, I'm applying the masking tape just so it holds everything and it's easier to sew. Now, depending how you cut or tore your pieces, they may not align exactly, but that's okay. Don't stress too much if they're slightly bigger or smaller or not totally aligned. It is a Frankenstein type of page after all. After adding the masking tape to attach these together, I'm going to pierce my holes so I can do some more stitching down the center. The way I pierce these holes, it sort of allows me to create a cross stitch of sorts. So I'm just stitching all the way back down again, alternating where I am putting the needle so it creates that cross stitch. I didn't have enough thread, so I'm going to just attach another piece and I'm tying it in a knot and I'm leaving the knot as part of the stitching visible and creating interest and texture. Going to tie that off and trim it, and then I thought to try and see if I could tie this into some kind of a bow. It was a little too short, didn't look great, so I just cut it shorter. I have this little heart which is from a scrapbook paper. It looks like it's hand drawn. I just love how it looks. So I've just fussy cut that out. I've left a bit of a white border all the way around. And now I'm finding a marker that I have that's a similar color to my splatter and thread. And I'm coloring in my heart to match. I'm going to add that as a focal point on the left. And because everything is quite dark, I am going to add a little bit of white highlights to the heart just to make it stand out a little bit more. I'm using a thin paintbrush and some gesso for this. And using a glue stick, I'm going to stick my little heart down on the left. And in the meantime, I smudged the white highlight while I was trying to do this, so I'm just going to re-add it quickly. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Art Journal August and you tried the tearing and restitching to let yourself come out of your comfort zone. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Happy creating, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.